The show you're about to watch was recorded earlier this week, a couple days before our friend in the movement, Charlie Kirk, president and co founder of Turning Point USA, was assassinated at a campus event in Utah. Charlie, in the words of his young wife, Erica, was a force. He spoke unafraid and boldly in defense of life, family, and freedom. In January, I was privileged to be in a small room with Charlie, Kristen Hawkins of Students for Life, and colleagues and friends of the movement where he was a featured speaker. It was such a gift to hear from our friend Charlie and all that God was doing throughout the movement from his amazing perspective. Right after Charlie was taken home, a powerful question hit me. What would Charlie want us to do? And my answer was he would want us to fight, but in a very specific way. He would tell us to never stop talking and debating. He would tell us to never stop speaking up for Christ, life, family, and freedom. No matter the threats against us, he would tell us it was worth it. So I just have to say, well done, Charlie Kirk, good and faithful servant. And I want to encourage all of us to commit to praying for his wife, Erica, and his two children. Ironically, the show that you're about to watch is an audacious reflection on the true good and beautiful, something that Charlie fought for every day of his life. And though it's a meager offering, I dedicate this discussion to Charlie. God bless you and thank you, Charlie Kirk. Because I think there's something in the human heart that tells us we don't use and abuse people. We don't leave behind the people we love, much less those we committed to. Your oath is your integrity. And when you give your life to someone in marriage, indeed, what some believe is actually a God-ordained lifelong covenant, and you give of your heart and your body in such a total and completely intimate way, one that naturally begs lifelong respect and protection, how can someone haphazardly toss that aside and for a moment at a Coldplay concert? Well, howdy, everyone, and welcome to the Lauren Muzyka Show. I'm your host, Lauren Muzyka, attorney and president CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life. So thrilled, so blessed to have you with me once again. So, we haven't actually done one of these since May. And since there's a lot that happened this summer in pop culture that either impacts or reflects the current state of the culture battle, I figured it was about time to round it all up for another hot take. Now, if you're new to the show, periodically I do a ballpark 10 to 20 minute take on something hot in the news and its impact on life, family, and freedom. This time around, I'm putting out there a possibly hard to believe, but powerful premise for you to chew on. That the latest to hit the news in regards to the Cracker Barrel rebrand, Taylor Swift's engagement, and the Coldplay affair is all tied together with some common yet profound threads. Namely, they evidence a hunger in the human heart and culture at large for a return to decency and simplicity, and even evidence something called the natural law. Now, already, some of you may be listening to this and you're like, whoo, Lauren, this kind of sounds like a stretch. But I ask you to hang with me for a few minutes and I'll explain it. Maybe I'll win you over by the end of this podcast. Now, before I dive in, I'm going to assume that most of you know about the ins and outs of those three news items. And many of you probably know what I mean when I say natural law. But just in case, let me go ahead and rattle off a super fast summary of each one. And then I'm going to pull it all together and make a natural law argument. So here we go. Cracker Barrel, a Southern themed restaurant and gift store chain with 600 locations across the United States, originally designed to feel like a nostalgic, homey roadside stop since its launch in Tennessee in 1969, unveiled a new minimalist logo on August 19th and announced a plan to declutter their old time country interior with a contemporary country theme, updated lighting, and updated seating. However, after immediate and intense backlash from customers and critics, just 1 week later, Cracker Barrel reversed its decision on the logo, reverting to its super beloved old timer branding. The outcry in great part came from many conservatives who accused the restaurant chain of going woke. Then on August 26th, Pop icon Taylor Swift announced her engagement to Travis Kelce, a tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, stating on Instagram, right under pictures of Kelce down on one knee with a sea of roses in the background and a $500,000 engagement ring, your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married. That's what the Instagram post said. Very simply, your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married. The statement was likely a nod to fans affectionately dubbing Swift an English teacher because of her thoughtful literary references in her music, as well as her warm, teacherly vibe, as some described her. And Kelsey is, a big football player, right? So interestingly, their romance was often likened to a small town love story, despite Kelsey's net worth of about somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 90 million and Swift's net worth of about 1.6 billion. But Swifties, as her fans are called, loved this simple reference to a reserved English teacher falling for the charismatic gym coach. They went crazy in the comments, proclaiming that Swift was hearing them and understanding them, with one fan exclaiming, English and gym teacher? She sees our tweets. OMG. And then this July, there was the Coldplay affair. A married tech executive, astronomer CEO Andy Byron, and his company's married human resources chief, Kristen Cabot, were caught in a seemingly intimate moment on the Kiss Cam during a Coldplay concert in Massachusetts in July, prompting lead singer Chris Martin in the middle of the concert to quip, either they're having an affair or they're just very shy. I mean, when the camera went on Byron and Cabot, they ducked, they got out of the way, and the rest was history, right? The clip quickly went viral, triggering an internal company investigation. Both Byron and Cabot resigned shortly afterwards. Now, Kristen has filed for divorce from her husband, Andrew Cabot, and the company has weathered crazy, widespread media attention, all while Chris Martin confirms the band will continue using the Kiss Cam despite the debacle. It really seemed that this was all everyone was talking about midsummer. I mean, the memes that circulated on social media making fun of the situation, I have to admit, cracked me and I'm sure many of you up. Likely because if we didn't laugh, we'd cry thinking of their poor spouses and children in the background. So, again, this is so completely messed up, but it really won the attention of the country and partly the world. And just so I round this out as I get ready to bring in a natural law argument, let's go ahead and quickly define what the natural law is. Natural law is the idea that we have a law that's written on our hearts. Many people believe that that is God given and it's discernible through the light of reason. Another way to put this is that there are just some things that as human beings we can't not know. And the moral principles and rights that flow from the natural law provide a standard for evaluating human or positive law. The natural law has actually, throughout history, greatly influenced legal systems. I would even assert that it's the basis of the American legal system, human rights frameworks, and ethical reasoning, asserting that laws contrary to the natural law actually lack true moral authority. Just to give you one example, think of the Nuremberg trials from 1945 to 1946 that prosecuted the Nazis for their crimes against humanity. It did not matter that many of the Nazis said that they were just taking orders and they were just following the law when they killed the Jewish people. The international community said to them, you should have known better, that there was a higher law at work here that tells you that it is wrong to kill innocent human beings. Now, it's important to note that when you start creating law based on natural law principles, there might be a debate about how that's best legislated. This is actually why we have legislatures, right? So, if we want to protect human life, for example, we set speed limits, right? But whether the speed limit is set at 55, 65, 75, that may be up for debate. But and this is so important to note, the underlying principles are almost always universally agreed upon. Okay, with that foundation, let me go ahead and dive in. Cracker Barrel. Now, as one of my friends on Facebook said, the new bland logo, which left behind a 48-year long logo with an elderly man and its namesake barrel evoking a nostalgic rustic country store atmosphere cemented the destruction that had already begun in the brand going the way of the woke. That's what a lot of people believed. In fact, Robbie Starbuck, an American conservative activist and former music video director, best known for his anti DEI campaigns that influenced major corporations to change policy like Walmart, he was a key leader who blew open Cracker Barrel's change in values, citing their involvement with pride events, deep partnership with far left organization HRC, which supports child sex changes in men and women's bathrooms, and attendance at DEI roundtables, among many other things. But of all the analysis that I saw on this, I don't know if anyone quite said it better than my colleague Dina. And this is literally what she posted in the comments on my Facebook wall. This was so powerful to me. She said, I've been thinking, why did the Cracker Barrel rebrand bother me? And I figured it out. I was falling asleep last night while listening to a podcast featuring the former chaplain to the Queen who became Catholic. He said, there is a civil war within the culture. Secularists are trying to undo all that is good and holy. I'm not saying that Cracker Barrel is necessarily good and holy, but you could argue it used to be. No matter what location it was across the country, it was like walking into my Aunt Angie's farm. You never knew what treasures you were going to find. By the way, Angie was easily 1,000 years old when I was 4 or 5. In other words, she was a family icon. We go out to her farm maybe once a year. It was always an adventure. In each of the Cracker Barrels across the country, the decor was curated by the local managers and decorators who went to different farm stores, auctions, and antique shops to find the perfect pieces to represent that region's farm economy. The new decor now looks like something Chip and Joanna Gaines would design. And yes, it's clean. Yes, it's pretty. Yes, it's bright, but it's lifeless. It's the same in every single restaurant, or at least that was the plan. I don't want to walk in and see the same thing in every single Cracker Barrel. I want to see photos of a band from 1945 from the local high school. I want to see old flour bags that were used as fabric for dresses. I want to see wool shears from the local farm. I want to see that local flavor. I don't want to see the inside of a Bahama Breeze clearly made to look like fake country. So, going back to the culture war, it's almost like the DEI hire in Cracker Barrel who pushed for rebranding was trying to take the soul out of Cracker Barrel. She tried, but the American people pushed back. And if you stop to think about what Dina just said, that's powerful, right? We're nostalgic sometimes for the good old times, a simpler way. And we want people to be unafraid to be true to all that's good, true, and right. It's enough. And more so, it's desired. I have to admit, when I first saw the announcement of the rebrand, as a nonprofit leader and someone with a passion for business marketing and branding, and as someone who hasn't eaten at a ton of Cracker Barrels, this didn't initially bother me until I took a deeper dive and realized there was a lot more to it. What direction are they going to go? We shall see. All right, with Taylor Swift, I find it interesting that of all places they could have picked to host a proposal to the richest female musician in the world, they chose a relatively simple outdoor setting, drowning in roses, and simply said, hey, your English teacher and gym teacher are getting married. Never mind their crazy net worth. Never mind Swift being one of the highest grossing artists of all time and arguably the most dominant modern era artist. Never mind that Kelsey is one of the best tight ends in NFL history with multiple Chiefs franchise records. Sure, they're naturally going to want elevated and elegant, no doubt. But even more so, they wanted to be relatable and simple. And some might say that they chose the setting that they did simply to be approachable to their fans. And I absolutely see that and agree with that. I am sure there was a big PR team in the background, incredibly involved in the planning of their engagement. But let me throw something else out there. Why was the simplicity, the sweetness of this so attractive? I submit to you, besides the fact that it absolutely has an approachable Princess Kate, Prince William vibe, knowing we all, especially us women, love to live vicariously through modern day royalty. It's more that their fans loved the successful love story of boy meets girl. Boy gets down on one knee, tough football star chooses the somewhat awkward school teacher. And yes, such beauty begs a flood of roses and a nice ring. It has vibes, I'd submit to you, that especially call to the depths of the female heart. We want the strong prince to come in and shower us with his love, rescue us from the crazy to the simple and beautiful, and prove his love for us. And I'm sure the men are out there going, way to slay this dragon. Wow, dude, way to snag Taylor Swift, right? I mean, again, this whole idea is why the Disney movies sell so well. You know, the prince slays the dragon, he runs into the castle, and he wakes up Sleeping Beauty. He rescues Snow White, right? Okay, at risk of being cheesy, let me actually recall to mind some of Taylor Swift's lyrics from her song Love Story. She says, Romeo, save me. I've been feeling so alone. I don't know what to think. He knelt to the ground and pulled out a ring and said, marry me, Juliet. You'll never have to be alone. I love you, and that's all I really know. I talked to your dad, so we're hearkening back to the old fashioned, the idea that he actually went to her father and asked for permission. Says, "Go pick out a white dress. It's a love story, baby. Just say yes." And in the midst of a culture that doesn't know what a woman is, it's so refreshingly simple and lovely. And yes, up front, I have no idea if Swift and Kelsey fully believe in marriage the way that many of us as believers do. Maybe they have a prenup and they're preparing for the worst, as a lot of Hollywood stories go. But I hope it's built on something lasting because marriage with two humans is challenging enough without that timeless foundation, right? But I will say it at least has the look of what we all romance and hope for. So, moral of the story is I just put forth men, go fight for your women and all that's true, good, and beautiful. We're hungry for it. And ladies, just be your lovely, light filled selves. Receive his love and say yes and give back to that love as well. All right. And then there was the Coldplay kiss cam that caught married lovers Andy Byron and Kristen Cabot holding each other. Just to dive right in, I found it refreshing that the world cried foul and seemed to universally agree on something in the modern era for once. And that is that cheating is flippin' wrong. Now, many of us had shades of other concerns as well. I was personally disgusted that a CEO, the leader of a leading software company, would have the audacity to set this kind of example and with an HR exec of all people. I mean, the audacity of that, right? Being a CEO, that just like grossed me out. But amazingly, Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, man or woman, or maybe one of the 90 other genders, haha, we found a point of unity where we could all resoundingly say, this is wrong. And I'm sure most of us, as we cried foul, thought of the unknowing spouses, children, and families affected in the background. Because I think there's something in the human heart that tells us we don't use and abuse people. We don't leave behind the people we love, much less those we committed to. Your oath is your integrity. And when you give your life to someone in marriage, indeed, what some believe is actually a God ordained lifelong covenant, and you give of your heart and your body in such a total and completely intimate way, one that naturally begs lifelong respect and protection, how can someone haphazardly toss that aside and for a moment at a Coldplay concert? I mean, yes, I'm sure that that was one meetup in a long line of others, but to have the audacity to show that off, even in some small way, even if you're way up in the stands, still in front of coworkers at a public event, I think many of us said, dude, you deserve the world's gaze for a moment. And still, I know I had a human moment where I had to pull myself back at one point from focusing on their mistakes, their sin, and look at my own self, remembering I'm a sinner still being saved by God, and I don't have a right to overly compare sin. And if I don't think that I don't have the ability to go down a dark path but for the grace of God, I'm fooling myself. Because the way that you get there is by making one concession and then another and then another. And you feel justified. So you keep going and you end up further and darker than you ever dreamed. This is the story of every abortion worker who's worked inside the abortion industry. I'm the receptionist. I'm just taking phone calls. I'm just helping with paperwork. Oh, then now I'm called back to the lab to help out with something, but I'm not directly involved with abortion. And then one day I'm called into the operating room to hold the probe over the belly, that will show the abortionist where the baby is so they can go in and do a complete abortion. I mean, again, this is every story of every one of us in human history when it comes to sin. But I just kind of had to stop here and reflect that it was refreshing. How refreshing that we're still decent enough at this stage in human history that we almost universally agree that this is a spade and should be called one. And yes, I hope maybe if we haven't already, we'll stop and pray for both of those families. And that brings me to my summary thought here. I want to throw out there that these events point to the idea that we are hungry for what is real, what is true, good, beautiful, and simple, that we know innocent human beings deserve better, that we know that marriage means something. And regardless of your net worth, we all want the timeless love story. And go with me here for another moment. What if this idea is the key to winning people over to the pro-life, pro-family movement? That instead of lambasting people and constantly telling them why they're wrong, it's more about pointing people to a light, to a truth that's already there, something that's naturally already lovely and beautiful if you just give it a good look, something that harkens back to a simpler and even safer time, a time where we believed in God, we believed in marriage and children, and that they were precious and counted and mattered, and they were among our greatest blessings, where we didn't find it necessary to become someone else to be liked and loved, but simply wanted to be who we were called to be. It reminds me of the verse, Matthew 6:33. It says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you," will be given to you, in other words, as well. So, my resounding thought here is that we should aim to live the best life possible in accordance with and in service of faith and family, to choose supportive friends and honest work that supports our foundational beliefs and values, to live in such a way that points people to the true, the good, and the beautiful, where we show them a light and even a lightness that's so lovely that they can't help but want it for themselves. People are more hungry for it than we, or sometimes they, even know. Let's go be bearers of that light. All right. Let me know. Send me a message if I won you over on this. I'm interested to hear your feedback. You can drop me a line at lauren@sidewalkadvocates.org. And with that, thank you again for joining me for another episode of the Lauren Muzyka Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on the Sidewalk Advocates for Life Facebook page, YouTube channel, or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much, everybody.